to be honest, academics don't really care about us. The society doesn't really care about us. We're considered a fringe element and people that did this to themselves. Hello friends, welcome to the fourth and final episode of my series on how to restore testosterone production in the body and restore one's fertility after the use of anabolic androgenic steroids, which will be called AAS in this video. I'd like to alert you to the fact that there is a blog post linked down below in the description. I highly recommend that you read it. It will be clearer than this video, and there will be some things in the video which you'll probably want to review later on. Now, with that said, this video will come in two parts. First, I will tell you some of the observations that I've made from experience, and second, I will describe to you my protocol that I developed for my own rehabilitation and in detail. So let's begin. First of all, my observations come from over 15 years of experience in power sports, as well as over 10 years of experience with anabolic androgenic steroids, AAS. I hate saying that phrase. Anyway, I have a lot of experience with it personally, but I was actually involved in the anabolic androgenic forums since I was 16 years old or so. So since around 2004 or 2003. And I've learned quite a bit over the years and seen a lot of things come and go, and that's one of the reasons that I don't make many videos on anabolic androgenic steroids for you guys, is because not only do I think it's there's some dangerous elements of it, but that's not the real reason. The main reason is because it bores me a little bit because I've been involved in it for so long. With that said, I've learned some things along the way, and let me tell you what they are in regards to restoring function of the HPG system, the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal system. So first of all, what I've noticed is that most people who use anabolic androgenic steroids for over a year in a row, or who have done several cycles of steroids, tend to stay on some form of exogenous testosterone for life. Most people. I mean, it is extremely rare that you see somebody that used AS for a significant amount of time and totally stopped. Very rare. Usually, if they do stop, they go back on testosterone after a while and they say it's just TRT, and it may even be just TRT. Now, let me note that, okay, I won't say anything about this guy, but anyway, TRT is not, if you're on TRT, you've used steroids for a long time, you will actually end up looking like a slightly more muscular than average person. You'll still be a bit more muscular because, as we know, and personal experience as well as from clinical studies, that there are permanent changes to the muscle tissue after years of anabolic androgenic steroid use, but they're not such big changes that you will look like you're on steroids when you're not.
Just because I'm on HRT, 140 mgs a week, doesn't mean you should be. Ask your doctor.
Like somebody that also produces YouTube videos in a very angry fashion that I've noticed says he uses 140 milligrams of testosterone a week, which is not all he uses for sure. However, with that said, sorry to go a bit off topic, but the point is, most people do not go completely off. Even if they do go on TRT and stay on that, which often happens, people over the age of 30, 35, I know a lot of people in the powerlifting world, stuff like that, that they stop, but they don't want to live a hypogonadal life forever. And they also have this kind of thing they tell themselves, like, it's good for me, low testosterone is bad for my health, this is for longevity purposes, for quality of life, which, by the way, it may be for quality of life. It's definitely not for longevity purposes, but it may be for quality of life. And there is some slight evidence that shows that having very low testosterone levels on men may be unhealthy in some specific parameters only. However, the point is, very few people go completely off. And because of that reason, not much is really known about how to actually recover from steroid use. There's not much known. People have post-cycle therapies that last 2 weeks to a month and a half. But not much can be done in 2 weeks to a month and a half. Let me tell you that from personal experience, as well as from experience of clients and from friends, as well as from the clinical literature. To really recover your system's function, you need to be on if you've used high doses or been on steroids for a long time, you need to use a program that lasts for over 6 months to 2 years of using different tools to recover your system. And often recovery doesn't come in a year and a half even. It takes 2 to 3 years. So don't think that those post-cycle therapies are something that are recovering your HPG system. In fact, what they're doing is still a good thing, because they're making sure that you don't lose it because you didn't use it. They're still getting your brain, your pituitary, to release some luteinizing and follicle stimulating hormone. They're telling your testes to produce a bit of testosterone. They're doing a little bit, and it's better than nothing. But don't think that that is a therapy. It's not. It's a jump start, a little jump start, and then people go back on steroids. So it's still good, but that's not the way it really works. And this is the reason why people don't realize the significance of what you got to do to be able to recover from steroids. Now, excuse me, with that said, another thing I'd like to point out to you guys is the difference. Now, in clinical studies, there is some speculation. Okay, so what is the speculation about recovery from steroid use? East Asians are shown to recover worse. It is speculated that the more variety of anabolic androgenic steroids are used, the harder it will be to recover. It's speculated that the higher doses are harder to recover from, and it's speculated, and this is almost completely sure, that the longer the duration, the harder it is to recover from. Now, with that said, from personal experience, let me tell you, and also let me tell you another thing from clinical research before I say that, is that they have noted that the size of the gonads is a very good indicator of how likely a protocol may be to recover natural testosterone production and spermatogenesis. So the size of the gonads in clinical literature are used as a heuristic measure to tell how likely protocols may work. Now, from personal experience, let me tell you some additional things. What you'll notice if you use anabolic androgenic steroids for serious use, by the way, just to be clear, anybody who goes off for any significant amount of time in a year does not get very strong or very big. That doesn't happen. Those people who are very big or very strong stay on most of the year. If they are health conscious, they may go off long esters, which by the way stay in the body for over 6 weeks anyway, including testosterone and anaphate. But they'll go off the steroids they're on for about a month to a month and a half a year. That's all. They don't go off for 4 months, because if you do that, you took 2 steps forward and now you take 1.5 steps backwards. It doesn't work. So, and unfortunately, when I was younger, we didn't really know this. We thought that you could cycle a certain amount a year and stay off, and you'd keep your gains for a longer time period. That doesn't work. Now, you do have changes to your body that are permanent. So, for example, the muscles change, the muscle fibers change, the shape of the muscles change. The ease with which you can gain muscle changes, but there are other permanent things that, we don't need to get into in this video, but we've talked about before, and how the video called how PEDs change your brain, as well as I mentioned in an earlier video, the testicular fibrosis that occurs has been seen in post-mortem bodybuilders, which means scar tissue in the testicles. There are a lot of permanent changes, and to be honest, they don't really know how the extent of these permanent changes, because to be honest, academics don't really care about us. The society doesn't really care about us. We're considered a fringe element, and people that did this to themselves. So people don't really know. But the point is, you need to be able to become very big or very strong. You have to be on anabolic androgenic steroids for an extended time period. And generally, these people don't go off very often. But when you've been on a cycle for an extended time period, what you'll notice is that your gonad size will change during the cycle. Sometimes your gonads will be very, very small, and sometimes they will be slightly below what they used to be when you weren't on steroids. That change reflects how impaired your HPG system is. The smaller the gonads, the more impaired it is at the moment, which probably means the more estrogen or the more androgenic feedback, as well as the more estrogenic feedback your brain is getting to turn off the gonadotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamus and the gonadotropins from the pituitary. Now, what I've noticed personally, as well as from the experience of clients and friends and so on, is that the harsher androgens, like trenbolone, will cause a disproportionate decrease in the gonadal size from like the same dose as, for example, testosterone would. I've also noticed that mega doses of testosterone will have a similar effect. So taking 3,000 milligrams of testosterone will cause dramatic gonadal atrophy, whereas 500 milligrams will not do the same thing. I've also noticed that the longer someone uses the steroids for continuously, the more long-term gonadal shrinkage exists, as well as it seems to be of a different nature. It doesn't, if you stay on for long enough, the fluctuations don't come around as often, which means it seems to indicate to me that there is a sort of permanent testicular damage to the area. And indeed, there very well may be. It seems to be that there is evidence that there is oxidative damage to the testicles, as well as we discussed, testicular fibrosis and so on. So, these are the observations I've made. Let me be clear. It is not clear that everyone can recover their testosterone production fully. Now, it is hard to tell all the time because most people did not do accurate blood tests right before they began anabolic androgenic steroids, so they don't really know what their testosterone levels were. And most people, when they go off the steroids, have passed a number of years, in which case their natural testosterone would have decreased anyway, and they're not even aware of it. So it's not completely clear. Now, I will tell you another thing. There are some people who go off AAS that claim to have testosterone levels at the US metric of 900 or so. And some people that do this, I have a very strong suspicion, are currently using HCG and judging their testosterone levels according to what their results are after using HCG. While you use HCG, the testosterone levels will always be higher. So that's not really, it's a bit misleading. What we would like to know is someone's testosterone levels 6 months after they finish their protocol completely, or a year afterwards. That's more interesting. Like, for example, for me, I don't use HCG at all. I don't use Clomid. I don't use anything. And that's the kind of testosterone level we're curious about. Now let me get into the protocol, what I wanted to tell you guys. So my protocol is a little bit different from the other protocols in the community. Dave Palumbo and Boston Lloyd, who I very much respect and admire, both have efficacious pregnancy protocols. They are somewhat similar. I think that they both recommend, well, the differences between them is this. So they both recommend HCG, HMG, and Clomid, which is clomiphene citrate. However, Palumbo recommends a lower dose of HCG than Boston Lloyd, and they both recommend a similar amount of HMG. I think it's 75 IU, I'm not sure, and they recommend, I think, 50 milligrams of Clomid. But there's another difference, which is that Boston has noticed in his clients that people who are using testosterone replacement therapy tend to recover better. So he sometimes recommends that people stay on testosterone replacement therapy, which, by the way, is not completely crazy or anything like that. It may sound like that, but in fact, there is some clinical evidence from clinical literature to think that, at least doctors did think, that people may respond better to, for example, RFSH, which is recombinant FSH, when they're on testosterone replacement therapy, although this turned out not to be the case. But now, my protocol is a little bit different because while they both say to stay on their protocol for as long as it takes to make a baby, my protocol is mainly, I haven't been trying to make a baby, my protocol is mainly focused on how I can recover my function naturally. So my protocol has a duration estimate, and it has differences in the desirable tools to be used. So for specifically, I highly recommend a recombinant FSH instead of HCG, and I also recommend, but this is speculative because I've not done it myself, EC, which is N-clomiphene citrate, over clomiphene citrate. Now, with that said, and also I recommend a combined use of an AI and a SERM, as opposed to just using a SERM. And I recommend titrating doses of HCG and HMG, as opposed to just using a stable dose. So to be specific, what I recommend is this. I mean, this is a recommendation for myself, and it's for educational purposes only, for everybody else. But let me say, and I'm going to talk for educational purposes as if I'm recommending this to myself. So with that in mind, so what I do is this. For the first 3 weeks, I use a low dose of HCG, 1,000 units taken every other day, subcutaneously, for the first 2 to 3 weeks or so. During this period, at the 3-week mark, of course, beforehand, a person should measure their blood testosterone levels as well as their semen parameters before they start anything. But after 3 weeks, measure again the blood parameters of testosterone and get an idea of how it's reacting to 1,000 units every other day. Now, in the first 3 weeks, it's a monotherapy. It's only HCG at a very low dose. The next phase lasts about five months or so. The next phase takes us from 3 weeks to 6 months. In that phase, what we do is we increase the dose of HCG from 1,000 units to up to 3,000 units every other day. Additionally, we increase the dose from 1,000 units of HCG to 3,000 units every other day. Additionally, and we titrate that dose, by the way, according to blood testosterone levels. So we continue to do blood tests and see how the testosterone levels are reacting, and we find a dose that works up to 3,000 units every other day. Additionally, now we include 2 more tools, which are the AI and anastrozole at 0.5 milligrams every day, and enclomiphene citrate or clomiphene citrate, in either case at 25 milligrams every day. Now, we may raise the clomiphene citrate or the AI depending on how high the blood testosterone levels react. We don't want the estrogen to be too much more significant as a communicator than the testosterone. But generally speaking, 25 milligrams and 0.5 milligrams is what I went for myself and what I would go for. After 6 months, now I introduce a 4th tool, which is the recombinant FSH. In the case that one absolutely cannot get recombinant FSH, one may use HMG, although it will be much less effective, I think, although clinical comparisons have not been done, and there are no studies on it, but I strongly believe so. By the way, I should mention something. There's a reason that, one other reason, even though they haven't compared HMG and RFSH in clinical studies, there's a very good reason people prefer recombinant FSH. There's a chance to get Jacob Creutzfeldt disease from HMG, theoretically, which is the same disease that cannibals get from eating brains. So it's very concerning. But anyway, the 3rd phase, what we do is we introduce recombinant FSH at 75 units every other day, and we, over the next period of time, will increase that 75 units every other day up to, at the absolute maximum, 400 units every other day. Now, on the way, we will titrate the recombinant FSH according to semen parameters of sperm count, sperm motility, and sperm morphology. With that said, we will also increase the HCG from 3,000 units a day up to, at maximum, 3,000 units every other day, up to, at maximum, 5,000 units every other day. So HCG will be at 5,000 up to 5,000 units every other day, and recombinant FSH will be up to 400 units every other day. Anastrozole will be kept at 0.5 milligrams unless we need to raise it because of the testosterone to estrogen ratio that is told from blood tests. And the clomiphene citrate, or enclomiphene ideally, will be raised from 25 milligrams daily to up to 75 milligrams daily. And in fact, it could be raised to 100 milligrams daily, but you have to use judgment with this. So basically, this, and of course, this all depends on sperm parameters that are analyzed from the semen, as well as testosterone levels in the blood test. But the way you can think of it is this: there's an initial phase that's testing the waters, seeing how we respond to HCG. Then there's a phase in which we take HCG to a medium level, and we introduce an aromatase inhibitor and clomiphene citrate or enclomiphene citrate. The purpose of this phase is to get the intratesticular testosterone to be working in the testicles. We're not trying to differentiate and mature the sperm yet, but we want the testicles to be working as well as they can be before we max out our use of the HCG in the next phase. In the next phase, we introduce recombinant FSH or HMG if you can't get recombinant FSH, and we titrate that up over the next, I'll get into time periods in a little bit, but we titrate that up to a maximum dose, and we titrate the HCG up to a maximum dose, and we take the clomid up potentially to a maximum dose of 100 milligrams, and we keep the AI at the same level to maintain a good ratio, or we raise it to 1 milligram from 0.5 milligrams. how this works is that the first phase lasts for about 2 to 3 weeks. Then we have a phase that's about 6 months long. And for some people, that will be enough. They will recover. And then, particularly people interested in fertility, will continue for another 6 months to a year and a half and potentially longer in the full version of the therapy. Now, for me personally, I had to use the full version to get a good result. And I do feel that I got a good result. I retain now the energy and, it's hard to tell what one was like before one used androgenic steroids, because even, for example, when you're on steroids, your voice changes. So my voice is very different than it used to be, but I can't tell if it's different than it used to be originally or when I was on cycle. But not on cycle, when I was just on them. I wasn't doing cycles that much. Although I did actually do cycles many years ago, a couple of cycles, and I recovered very well from them. I should mention, well, I'll mention that some other time. But the point is, this is the way it works. You have to use something that lasts over 6 months, ideally a year or so. I say a year and a half or longer, but that's for difficult cases that they really want to develop fertility, and they probably will never recover fully, by the way. Even they may get children, but they'll probably never recover fully, those kind of people. But for normal people, it's really a long therapy, and you really need to think of it like it's at least going to take you a year. And so you need the money to budget for that. It's going to be more costly, possibly more costly than your actual testosterone use previously was. Depending. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. I hope it gives you some ideas to work off of, and it gives you some ideas of the necessity of titrating. And by the way, a lot of these things come from clinical research. I have some citations in the 4 articles I produced, although I tried to keep the citations low because I knew that you guys probably that are watching this are not interested for academic reasons or for creating new theories of your own. But there's like 35 citations or so. Much of what I came up with here, the titrating nature, the length, the preferability of RFSH, the preferability of enclomiphene citrate, the combination of AIs with SERMs, these all come from clinical literature and academic literature, and not just out of my own head. It's not that I'm creative and I tried this on many people. To be honest, I don't know anyone that no one's ever asked me to help them with coming off permanently. So I've not even helped someone else. It's just been myself and reading the clinical literature. But I hope this may be helpful for you to get an idea of what's going on there, and also to get an idea on how to judge how badly your HPG system is being affected by whatever you're doing currently, by my observations made earlier. So anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope this series benefited you, and look forward to my next series, which is on serotonin. It's already being developed. It is already more detailed than the series on choline. It will be extremely informative and extremely useful, and I hope to see you guys next time. Thank you so much.